It takes a little while in billiards before you finally go for the black ball with the number 8. But when that moment comes, it's all about the win. Whether Suzuki has pulled that off with the GSX-8T and TT, or whether they've shown up too late to the party, that's what you'll find out in this video. Now, this whole billiard reference came to mind thanks to the big number 8 on the GSX-8T and TT, which you can see here on the side of the radiator. Suzuki's a bit late to the game with their retro middleweight, but maybe it's not too late yet, and we're going to check it out together today. I had the chance to ride both bikes thoroughly, and I'd like to start off by talking about the shared parts, or rather where this 8T and TT actually come from. The answer lies in the GSX-8S. Let's get this straight right from the start. Engine, frame, gearbox, chassis, brakes and electronic equipment, everything's exactly the same, one-to-one. Now, you might be tempted to say, well, it's just an 8S with some retro styling slapped on, but no, that's not it. And why that's not the case, we're going to go through that now. I already touched on it. Retro. The visual design is clearly a central theme with this bike, or these two bikes really. Suzuki has come up with the T, and this T harks back to the 1970s. Back then there was a model called the Titan, and the naked version here is loosely based on that. We actually got to meet the designer. He was here on site in Ljubljana, Slovenia, where we're filming this. And he told us that to really wrap his head around the concept, he actually bought himself an original Titan. He owns one now, and that's how he created this modern take on a classic. Now, when people hear TT, they immediately think of the tourist trophy on the Isle of Man, but that's not what the TT stands for here. In this case, it means Titan Timeless. The version with the bikini fairing is meant to take the retro vibe even further, leaning into that custom style direction Suzuki is going for with these two bikes. And that brings me straight to the differences between the two models. They're pretty much all visual. Apart from the bikini fairing and the lower belly pan, there's the color schemes, of course, but above all, it's the seat that stands out. Here we've got a seat height of 810 millimeters, whereas the T version comes in at 815 millimeters. So you're sitting a little lower on this one. The saddle also isn't quite as plush and doesn't have the same texture as the one on the T sibling. Otherwise though, the two bikes are really similar. Now onto the heart of it all, the engine. We already know this parallel twin with 776 cc and a peak output of 83 horsepower from the 8S. So again, absolutely identical here. And it's a friendly character. It's got torque right in the mid-range. You really don't need to wring it out. In my opinion, there's always plenty of pull, so you're better off just shifting up to the next gear. That's something you can do very smoothly thanks to the bi-directional quick shifter Suzuki has fitted here. As I said, all of that is familiar from the 8S version. Now, with the engine, we also need to talk about the sound. Unfortunately, there's basically none. It's very subdued. On the plus side, it only has a stationary noise level of 84 decibels, which is definitely worth mentioning. Suzuki has developed an exhaust system together with Akrapovic that's supposed to sound a bit more robust. Unfortunately, we didn't get to test it today, but I do know it because Nils has the same system fitted on his GSX-8S. It adds 2.5 horsepower and saves 2.1 kilos in weight. Now that we are talking about weight, there's been a change here compared to the 8S. A lithium-ion battery has been fitted, which weighs just 800 grams instead of the 3 kilos of the old lead-acid battery. So that's another place where a bit of weight has been saved. In the case of the 8T, that brings us to a total weight of 201 kilos. The TT, with its fairing and a bit of extra trim, comes in at 203 kilos. The overall permitted weight for both is 400 kilos, which means we get a fully usable payload of 199 and 197 kilos, respectively. So you can quite comfortably take a pillion along for the ride as well. Now I want to talk about the ergonomics. For me, the 8T is basically the GSX-8S for grown-ups. Why is that? The tank is noticeably wider and it also holds more fuel. It's got a capacity of 16.5 liters compared to 14 on the 8S. The seat height is also slightly higher, 815 millimeters, which gives you a more upright riding position. The handlebar is the same, so the triangle hasn't changed dramatically, but overall it just feels more like a proper bike. For me, this is a genuinely grown-up machine. The same goes for the TT. The seat height is 5 millimeters lower, but it still feels like more bike than the 8S sibling. I've ridden both versions for around 130 kilometers each, and I have to say, comfort-wise, it's definitely a step up from the 8S. The TT in particular is a real recommendation for taller riders like me. I'm 1.87 meters. It feels like it's half a class above the competition. And speaking of which, I'll be touching on that at the end of the video, so do stick around. On the 8TT, the seating position is a little more tucked in. The handlebars are identical, so that still works well, but the knee angle is a bit tighter as a result. The padding on the saddle is also a bit less pronounced. So for me, the comfort winner is definitely the 8T. And before I move on to the riding impressions, I want to quickly touch on some of the visual throwbacks to the 1970s Suzuki Titan. One detail that stands out is the headlight. Even back then, on the Titan, it wasn't fully round, and Suzuki has carried that over here to the 8T. It's got a flat section along the bottom, giving it a distinctive look. At first I thought this was the first modern Suzuki with a round headlight since the SV650 series ended, but that's not quite right. It's not fully round, but still we're clearly on a retro path here. Being on that retro path doesn't mean the performance is stuck in the past though, quite the opposite. The 8S for me is the benchmark in this middleweight segment when it comes to suspension, agility and handling. And the T and TT use the exact same ingredients. I have to say, after being away from Suzuki for a bit, they've really nailed it again. Everything here works beautifully together. On paper, the equipment isn't anything groundbreaking. The rear suspension only offers preload adjustment. Still, you've got a decent upside down fork here, anodized in gold. And the setup, in my opinion, really hits that sweet spot between comfort and sporty dynamics. Speaking of preload, just to give you a bit more detail, I set off in the morning with 3 out of 7 clicks with a rider weight of 100 kilos. That was too soft. At the first photo stop, I asked to bump it up to 5 clicks using the hook spanner. It's a bit fiddly but doable. With that setting, I was genuinely very happy. It's a really nice balance between comfort and dynamics. By the way, it's fitted with Dunlop Road Sport 2 tires. They warm up fairly quickly. And to be fair, we had ideal conditions today, 27 degrees and dry roads here in Slovenia. That said, I've got to mention, the traction control barely had to step in today. It's adjustable in 3 levels, by the way, but the grip was just outstanding. And together with the sporty chassis from the 8S sibling, it gave me a brilliant riding experience. The way both the TT and the T-steer into corners is genuinely impressive. It's direct, especially in switchbacks. There's hardly any stubborn mass to throw from one lean to the next. It's agile, lively and made for attacking twisty roads. Also practical, don't be fooled by the long hero blobs on the foot pegs. We really pushed it a bit today and the Suzuki handled it all without breaking a sweat. So don't let the retro looks mislead you. You're seeing for the first time on a production Suzuki bike bar and mirrors fitted as standard. And if you know the Apana, you'll know they don't just bolt that stuff on and call it a day. There's been serious R&D behind this. They worked hard to make sure that even with the smaller mirror surface, you get the same rear view as you do on the 8S. There's been real engineering effort put into these bar end mirrors, and they offer a superb rear view, properly well done. And even the retro style LED headlamp is the brightest Suzuki has ever fitted to a bike. We didn't get to try it ourselves since we weren't riding in the dark, but at yesterday evening's press briefing, Suzuki staff gave a short demo. And you could tell they really put effort into it. They went into the light lab and stepped it up again. As I mentioned earlier, the electronics are exactly the same as in the 8S. So here too, ABS and traction control are not lean angle sensitive. We've got 3 riding modes, A, B and C. In my view, mode B is kind of redundant. Mode A is my go-to if I want to ride dynamically and push on a bit. Mode C is ideal for slow, relaxed riding through city traffic. The throttle response on the Suzuki can be a bit harsh, but in Mode C, it's much smoother and significantly toned down. However, it also delays the torque delivery further up the rev range. So Mode C really is suited for cruising and taking it easy. For spirited riding, I definitely recommend Mode A. This TFT display is the same as we've seen on the 8S and 8R. On the 8TT, it doesn't bother me at all. It's nicely integrated into the front cockpit. On the 8T though, I'd personally go for the small optional mini windscreen to blend it in a bit better. And I do wish that since they went with this cool idea of the billiard ball with the number 8, they'd done something playful with it, like a little 8 animation on screen during boot up. But no, it's exactly the same as on the 8R and 8S. Bit of a missed opportunity if you ask me. Still, in practical terms, the display is superbly readable. Brightness is top tier and adjustable in 3 levels, if you like. Other than that, the controls are all logically operated using the buttons on the left-hand side of the handlebar. And another really handy feature is the USB-C port. On the TT, it's placed on the left side of the cockpit. On the T, it's tucked just below the display on the left, easy to reach and nicely positioned. One more word about the brakes, because the same 8S setup is used here as well. I had to think back to when I last rode it, which was last year, and again, I was really impressed with the braking performance. The Nissan system with twin discs is absolutely state of the art. ABS is always on, can't be switched off, but the way it intervenes feels spot on, even when you're pushing it a bit on twisty back roads. It's just right for a sporty yet relaxed ride. Something I always appreciate, and something I think belongs on every motorcycle, is an adjustable front brake lever. Unfortunately, Suzuki saved a bit on the clutch side. There, the reach isn't adjustable, but the brake overall is really well done. There's hardly any stand-up effect when cornering, and just 2 fingers are more than enough to access the braking performance. They've really nailed it here, nothing negative to say at all. As for fuel consumption, in the morning I rode the 8T a bit more briskly, a bit more spirited, and the fuel consumption settled at around 3 liters per 100 kilometers. On the TT, the riding was a bit more relaxed, and I even saw 4.5 liters on the display. That means we're looking at a range of around 350 kilometers, which is more than sufficient for bikes in this class. So a big thumbs up to Suzuki for that. Speaking of thumbs up, if you're loving the 8T and 8TT, give them a like. And if you've enjoyed my presentation as well, now let's move on to my conclusion. There was quite an outcry when Suzuki published the prices for both bikes on their website. 10,990 euros for the 8T and 11,590 euros for the TT, each in Germany, and each excluding additional fees of 575 euros. That is, of course, quite a chunk of money. To put it simply, bargain hunters should go straight for the 8S. If you don't need the 8T, if you can do without the bigger tank and a bit more comfort, and if you're not particularly tall, then the 8S is clearly the better value for money option. But Suzuki really have put in the effort here, details that warm the heart and make the owner feel proud. When you swing a leg over it, you notice the sculpted tank design, the updated Suzuki lettering, the beautifully crafted side panels, the metal exhaust cover, proper metal, not plastic. Real thought went into this, and in that sense I think the price premium is at least partly justified. These 2 bikes are great alternatives that will appeal to people who maybe didn't connect with the insectoid styling of the 8S. Now, just a quick market comparison. That's not so easy because in terms of performance and the presence these bikes have, the 8T and 8TT feel like they're half a class above the Yamaha XSR 700 and the Kawasaki Z650 RS, which are both significantly cheaper. At the same time, in terms of both performance and price, Suzuki has kept a respectful distance from the 900s offered by their Japanese rivals. One bike that might not immediately come to mind, but should, is the Husqvarna Svartpilen and Wiedpilen. In Austria, those are priced at 11,990 euros. By the way, Austrian pricing for the 8T is 11,990 and for the TT it's 12,990. So things are starting to get a bit expensive, unfortunately. These prices are for the standard color schemes, by the way. Full details can be found on Suzuki's website. But I will say, my favorite color for the 8T is the orange one, and sadly that one costs extra. There are two different variants of the 8T and both are priced the same. So now you know what the whole universe looks like around these two new Suzuki models. And now it's over to you. Let me know in the comments below how you think Suzuki has done with their entry into the retro segment. Did the number 8 sink the ball and win the game, or have they shown up a little too late to the party? Let me know. Post any questions you've got down below and I'll try my best to answer them honestly and thoroughly. Thanks for watching and goodbye from Slovenia. Take care.